Hi everybody, and welcome to Run Tall with Tim. I'm Tim. I'm really glad you're here. I hope you're having an awesome day. On today's episode, I'm going to be comparing the Hoka Clifton 7 with the newly released Clifton 8. Hoka's made a few changes from the Clifton 7 to the Clifton 8, including some tweaks to the upper, the midsole, and even the landing platform. But before I get into it too far, I always like to demonstrate what it looks like to run in the shoes that I'm about to review for you. So let's do that. But then when we come back together, we're going to talk about those tweaks and changes to see if upgrading to the Clifton 8 is the right thing to do. If you're new to the channel, I post running shoe reviews, comparisons, and shoe battles weekly. I also like to post other videos about running. So if you enjoy watching running shoe reviews and other videos related to running, be sure to subscribe to the channel and click the notification bell so that you'll be notified each time that I upload new content. Also, I'll put a link in the description below for reviews I've completed for each one previously. Now the Clifton series is considered to be a neutral road shoe. I did order them true to size. They retail for $130, although you can find the Clifton 7 on sale right now for right around $100. There is a slight difference in weight. The Clifton 7 came in at 9.1 ounces or 256 grams, and that's for a men's size 9 on my scales, while the Hoka Clifton 8, slightly lighter, came in at 8.9 ounces or 252 grams. So let's start with the upper and take a look at the changes that they made from the Clifton 7 to the Clifton 8. Beginning with the 7, here you can see that they have these big, wide perforations up in the toe box, and those continue on through to the midsection of the shoe, all the way back around to the heel counter. Part of the issue that I had with the 7 was getting and maintaining a solid lockdown feeling across the midfoot section of the shoe. And I think in no small part, it's because of the big, wide perforations. There's just quite a bit of give there in that material. Now they did tweak it, they made some changes, and I think these were positive changes. On the Clifton 8, you can see that they went to a much smaller types of perforations up there in the toe box, and then as you work your way around to the side of the shoe, they really have some quilted material here, and I'm going to try to zoom in so you can kind of see that a little bit. But that quilted material, that just takes some of that stretch out of it. So it was much easier for me to get a secure lockdown feeling across the midfoot section of the shoe. I found that they both had about adequate airflow. Neither one of them really blew me away in terms of allowing your feet to breathe, but they did a good job at least in keeping me comfortable while I was out running. Up in the toe box, I did feel like I had plenty of room in both shoes in order to be able to splay my toes. It felt really comfortable. Now with the Clifton 8, I did feel like it was just a little bit more snug or narrow in the midfoot section of the shoe. And I'm sure that has a lot to do with the geometry of the midsole and the outsole, and we'll talk about that more here in just a minute. Now they used an engineered mesh on both of these two uppers. Although with the Clifton 8, I feel like that engineered mesh material is just a little bit softer to the touch in terms of the texture, but it feels really comfortable on foot. Now with the Clifton 7, they also have a little bit extra plastic overlay up there around in the toe box. They lost most of that with the Clifton 8. I'm not sure that made a big difference. I'm sure that is up there just to give it a little bit of durability and some structure, but I don't know that that change was a major change, but it is something that I just wanted to point out to you. Comparing the eyelet chains, not much has changed here. With the Hoka Clifton 7, they do have this loop here, and that's to help cinch up that material upper in your toe box. It has some plastic overlays here on the outside, and that's just to give you a little bit of durability so you don't rip through those with your laces. And then on the inside cage area, they have some extra material there as well. And again, that's for some durability reasons. They have that same thing going on with the Clifton 8. They did lose that loop up here, but it didn't seem to make a difference for me. In fact, I feel more locked in and secure in the Clifton 8 than I did and do in the Clifton 7. But that has more to do with the type of material that they used on the upper and how that they designed it with that quilted material so they would lose that stretch, so it's much easier for me to get cinched in here. And as we look at the midsole and outsole later on, you're going to see that it's just a little bit more narrow there, which means that that upper is sewed in kind of underneath your foot almost, and then wraps up around again to the other side. And for me, that just cinches you in a little bit more securely than it did in the Hoka Clifton 7. Both shoes feature a semi-gusseted tongue, but they did make some changes here. Now, although I thought that the Clifton 7 has plenty of padding on the tongue, they added a little bit of padding or density to the padding that they used in the Clifton 8. So as we look at the Clifton 7, here you can see that, it's fairly thick, but it's fairly soft too, and pretty pliable. It has those big perforations up there to help give it a little bit of airflow. It just feels a little bit lighter, a little bit more airy. And then we can take a look and see where the gussets are on the Clifton 7. Now we'll take a look at the Clifton 8, and you can see right away, you'll notice that there's just a bunch more padding there, or at least it feels more dense padding, and they've lost those perforations, so it doesn't have that same airy type of a feeling on foot. The gussets are pretty much the same in terms of the placement, and I'd say that the material here is a little bit more solid than the gusseted material that they used in the Hoka Clifton 7. So all in all, that makes it just run a little bit warmer underfoot, but I guess what you're giving up in terms of breathability, gain, and comfort with that extra padding. As we compare the padding around the heel collar and the tab, we can see, with the Hoka Clifton 7, they have plenty of padding there. They have that nice Achilles heel flare, and they changed absolutely nothing with the Clifton 8. It's got the same amount, same styling. It's got the same Achilles heel flare that they have here. Neither shoe has a pull tab back here to help get your shoes on, but you can use that Achilles heel flare to help do that if you need to or want to. And they both have this nice little area that your Achilles rests in, and I found that to be comfortable on both of them. The really only change that they made here in terms of the padding and around the collar and the tab is the material that they use. In the Hoka Clifton 8 here, this is a more smooth type of material than it is in the Clifton 7. So let's compare the heel counters on these. And with the Clifton 7, you can see that they have a fair amount of plastic that's on the outside as an overlay that starts on the medial side and wraps around to the lateral side of the shoe. And it's pretty substantial. And then you can also see that they have their EVA foam that comes up pretty high, both on the medial as well as all around to the lateral side of the shoe as well. And I often describe that feeling as sitting in the bucket seat of a racing car. So your heel's kind of nestled into that EVA foam that you have there. And then as we turn and we look at the Hoka Clifton 8, we can see that they just have more of that plastic. So they've added some plastic in terms of the overlay. They did change the texture a bit. It feels like they've wrapped it in a little bit of material somehow. So it's really soft to the touch. But you can see that it too wraps around your heel. And then that EVA foam, they kept that styling as well. So that comes up pretty high around that heel counter of the shoe. Again, giving you that sitting in the bucket seat of a racing car feeling when you're out running that adds some stability to the feel as you move through your gait cycle. So let's talk about the magic in the midsole. And they've really maintained the amount or the stack height in each of these. So they still have 29 millimeters in the heel and 24 in the forefoot for a 5 millimeter offset from the heel to the toe. And they still are using that EVA foam, although they did reformulate the foam for the Hoka Clifton 8. Now, Hoka states that the midsole material in the Clifton 8 is softer, it's lighter, and more responsive. So we're going to check that out. I'm going to use the thumb test here. So I'm going to start with the Hoka Clifton 7 first. I'm going to go in the same place on each shoe, and I'm going to use my thumb to try to depress that EVA foam to see just how much resistance there is there. And there's a fair amount of resistance in the Hoka Clifton 7. And then as I switch up, and I'm going to grab the Clifton 8 now, if I don't drop the 7 onto the floor. And again, I'm using going in the same spot on the midsole here, using my thumbs to depress that material, and this is way softer. It's easy to tell when you're using your thumbs to compress that material just how much softer this is. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to feel more cushioned when you're out running, because that has not been my experience so far in these shoes. And here's why. Now, what I think is happening is because this midsole material is softer, it compresses a little easier, a little faster, so you kind of get to the ground contact a little quicker and you feel it more underfoot. And because you feel that ground contact, they don't feel quite as plush as you do, I think, in the Hoka Clifton 7. Doesn't mean that it's an uncomfortable ride, because it's not. I enjoy it. I think they're a quick shoe. I do find that material to be soft and to be responsive, so I think it lives up to Hoka's description that they have there, but it doesn't necessarily translate into being more plush on foot. Now, in terms of the geometry of each of these, they both maintain that nice heel bevel that they have here, and they each have that early stage meta rocker that Hoka's so well known for. But the big change here, or the change that they made here, has to do with the width of the landing platform. So let's take a look at the Hoka Clifton 7 first, and you can see that, it has a pretty wide landing platform up here, but it maintains that width through to the midsection all the way through to the heel of the shoe. With the Clifton 8, here's where they tweaked it a little bit. They still have a nice wide landing platform, but it gets more narrow here in the midsection of the shoe, and it does stay more narrow there in the heel as well. Now, I did mention earlier when we were talking about the upper material, how that felt a little bit more snug across the midfoot section of the shoe, and I think that that's why, because it is a bit more narrow here, so that upper material feels like it just wraps my foot more like a burrito rather than draping over it like it does feel more like in the Clifton 7. So let's compare the outsole on each of these. I'm going to start with the Clifton 7 first. And here you can see that they've got plenty of blown rubber. It starts in the heel in the high abrasion areas. They do have a fair amount of that EVA foam that's left exposed in the midsection of the shoe. But then they've got plenty up in the forefoot all the way through to your toe off. Give it a little bit of extra durability to help protect that soft EVA foam that you have underfoot. Then also you'll notice that they have a couple of grooves here, and that can add a little bit of a trampoline effect to your run experience. Oh, the other thing that I want to point out too, as long as I've got the 7 flipped over here, is they have these flex grooves, and they run pretty much across the shoe. So let's take a look and see how that compares to the changes that they made for the Clifton 8. Here you can see that they still have lots of blown rubber there. You got plenty around in that heel area, but there's less exposed EVA foam in the midsection of the shoe. And I think that that's important in this case because they did reformulate this to make it a little bit softer. So we don't want to have it chewed up prematurely. So I think it's important that they do protect that EVA foam with that outsole rubber. You can see it kind of comes down a little bit further into the midsection of the shoe. So I think that's a good change that they made there. Also, they have plenty up there all the way through to your toe off. And I also want to point out here this decoupled groove, or this groove that they have down the center. And you can see that it starts a little bit further back in the heel, and it runs all the way up through to the midsection of the shoe. And the reason I point that out is because it gives you kind of a squishy feeling in the heel, and it's noticeably different than in the Hoka Clifton 7. And we'll talk a little bit more about that when we talk about the performance here. But then also I want to point out that the flex grooves no longer run across the shoe, but they run more on a diagonal. And I think that that's important. I think that's a nice change that they made here. And why that's a nice change for me is typically when I toe off, I'm coming off in this direction. So now these flex grooves line up with how my foot is actually leaving the ground or moving through its gait cycle. So I think it makes it just a little bit more natural underfoot. I do feel like these give me a little bit more ground contact, and then with those flex grooves helping me move through the gait cycle a little less inhibited, just is a really nice feeling. Now, both of these daily trainers perform really well, and I don't think you'd be disappointed if you picked up either one. If you have the Hoka Clifton 7 and you're trying to decide if you want to move up to the Clifton 8, hopefully this will help make some of those decisions a little easier for you. So the Clifton 8, it does have a softer midsole material. It is a little bit more responsive in my opinion. And I also feel like I've got a little bit more ground contact, but they're not quite as plush a feeling in terms of your ride. Now they also, if you're a heel striker, I think have a little bit of an advantage because again, I mentioned that they have that groove here back in the heel section all the way up to the midfoot. And with the softer EVA foam underfoot, this heel just feels like it's a little bit more squishy back here. So I think if that's where you're striking the ground, I think you're going to get a little bit more of a comfortable feeling in the Hoka Clifton 8s than you will in the Hoka Clifton 7. Or if you are a walker. Not everyone who watches these shoe reviews are buying shoes to necessarily run in, but I know a lot of people have questions about, are these good to walk in? Because there's many of us who have occupations where we're on our feet all day. And I think if you're walking where you are going to be striking the ground with your heel and moving through to your toe, that's just a natural gait for a walker, that you're going to find that the Clifton 8s are a little bit more comfortable that way, just because there's more give and a little bit more cushion in that heel. So it was worth updating to the Hoka Clifton 8 for me. I like the changes that they made to the upper. I like the fact that I can get a more secure lockdown feeling across the midfoot section of the shoe. I enjoy the reformulation of that midsole material. It's fairly subtle, but it does give me a little bit more of a ground contact feeling, but I still have plenty of cushion to keep me comfortable when I'm out running. And I like the flex grooves going on more of a diagonal that helps make me move through my gait cycle just a little bit more naturally. Thanks for making it to the end of the video, and thanks for joining me here today. I hope you have an awesome rest of the day. I really enjoyed making this for you. I hope you enjoyed it. As always, run tall, run strong, be kind to one another. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.